Hello, hello, hello. I'm sure that many of you have been watching today's press release by Keir Starmer, the 12th of May, talking about reducing immigration and wondering what the hell is going on. This is, after all, the same Keir Starmer who had a totally authoritarian response to the Southport riots, the same Keir Starmer who wanted to freeze our elderly to death, and the same Keir Starmer who wanted to tax our farmers into oblivion. Yet now, Keir Starmer is appearing to be radically right-wing. So, what the hell is going on? Well, speaking as someone who is truly right-wing and understands how politics works behind the scenes, I'm going to do my best to make sense of this insane situation. Let's get into it. In order to understand what's going on, I think that we first ought to watch this 1 minute 36 supercut of Keir Starmer's press release. Let's begin.
Now, make no mistake, this plan means migration will fall. That's a promise. But I want to be very clear on this. If we do need to take further steps, if we do need to do more to release pressure on housing and our public services, then mark my words, we will. But it's not just about numbers, because the chaos of the previous government also changed the nature of immigration in this country. Fewer people who make a strong economic contribution, more who work in parts of our economy that put downward pressure on wages. So perhaps the biggest shift in this white paper is that we will finally honour what take back control meant and begin to choose who comes here so that migration works for our national interest. You know, this is where the whole debate is skewed, as if some people think controlling immigration is reining in a sort of natural freedom, rather than the basic and reasonable responsibility of government to make choices that work for a nation's economy. And for years, this seems to have muddled our thinking. But let me be clear, it ends now. Gosh. We will create a migration system that is controlled, selective, and fair.
I mean, blimey, there's not a thing there that I can disagree with. Of course, it should be the role of government to not think ideologically, but to think pragmatically and responsibly, considering all factors best for the nation. Our previous governments, going decades back, have not acted in our best interests, and we know it. And yes, Keir Starmer's completely right that taking back control and the Brexit vote in general was done in large part to stop this sort of immigration. Instead of taking back control of our borders and reducing immigration, Boris Johnson raised immigration to levels previously unseen in our entire history. More than 1 million people each year were moving in to stay in the United Kingdom. It was, of course, absolutely ridiculous. So it's interesting to see that Keir Starmer, an utterly despised man who everyone called a massive leftist, is now framing what's been sold as a right-wing policy as pragmatic and sensible. One can't help but be reminded of Starmer's comments late last year, where he said that mass immigration had been a deliberate experiment at the nation's expense. At the time, people questioned whether Starmer was serious about the things that he was saying, yet now it seems pretty clear that he absolutely was. As such, I think we ought to look at what was said within this speech to see what Keir Starmer's policies really will be. I've chosen to look at this BBC article here, not for any affinity towards the BBC, because I frankly don't like them at all, but instead that the BBC at least claims to present things in a neutral manner, or at least centrist according to the establishment regime. There's no left-wing Guardian or right-wing GB News spin on a BBC article. In any case, let's read it. Labour's immigration plans at a glance. Right, so Keir Starmer has unveiled Labour's long-awaited plans to cut levels of immigration to the UK. The Prime Minister said that the White Paper, setting out proposals for future laws, would make the system controlled, selective and fair. Here is a summary of the key measures. So we have visas tightened for some, requiring an A-level qualification, reversing changes made under Boris Johnson's government. Lower qualification requirements will remain for sectors facing long-term shortages, or those considered key to the government's industrial strategy. And yeah, I mean, it's something like this that gives you enough pause to question what the true intentions of such a policy really is, but I mean, the same people are still in power and they still serve the same interests, so, you know, that hasn't changed, but it's interesting to see how they are at least presenting it as high-skilled immigration, getting rid of low-skilled immigration. So visas have been loosened for others, but they say that they're loosening requirements for high-potential individuals. so top scientific and design talent, people of that sort. It seems that permanent residency is being extended from 5 years to 10 years, double the period. Interesting. It seems they wish to scrap the social care visa, which was introduced by Boris Johnson. Overseas graduates will only be able to stay for a further 18 months after studies, down from 2 years. I still think 18 is far too much. It seems that they may be putting more refugees to work, which would not do any favour for wages, but interesting. And English language tests. They say that they're going to require higher English skills for working in this country. You know, I of course want them to go further, but in and of itself, this is a very good thing. And here, no overall cap, but they're saying that they will significantly reduce the numbers. Net migration. So it's interesting to see how they're framing this. It seems that they're not entirely giving up on mass immigration, though they are reducing it, and they're framing it more as high-skilled work rather than low-skilled work. You know, the best way I can make sense of this is through my video, The Haggler's Gambit. The Haggler's Gambit is when you are, let's say, in a market and you want to buy a product. The merchant selling the product has advertised a ridiculously high price and you want to negotiate it down. Let's say the thing was £20 but you only want to pay £10. You may manage to successfully get it down to £10 and you'll be very happy with yourself, but in reality the thing only cost the guy £2, so he is the real winner. With immigration, this could be taking form of the Boris wave being reduced to the Starmer wave. The Boris wave saw millions of people coming in a very short time, so in potentially reducing that by half, Starmer may look like he's doing us all a massive favour, but in reality hundreds of thousands of foreigners are still coming into our country. We are still paying far too high of a cost, but we feel much better about it. That is the Haggler's Gambit. You set the initial thing at this level, then bring it down to this level, and everyone's happy, but really it should only be at this level. But there is also another thing that may explain this. As I've been saying since the start of January, I believe that Keir Starmer is, at least narratively, on a long redemption arc. Typically, for many democratically elected leaders, their popularity falls off a cliff shortly after they are elected. However, immediately after the election, there is a brief honeymoon period. I believe that over the 5-year Labour term, the party had a number of policies it wanted to push. Some of these policies may indeed be popular, or may be able to be presented as popular, but many of them naturally would be despised. So it is my theory that Labour wanted to push through with their most unpopular policies first, and gradually build up their popularity in time for the 2029 election. And you know, there has been genuine, strong discontentment with Labour in this country. People utterly despise Keir Starmer and despise Labour for good reason. So, you know, perhaps Labour, the establishment, the regime, or whatever you want to call it, have seen this and felt the need to do something about it. That is certainly possible. In any case, it is very obvious that the media of late has been very favourable towards Keir Starmer. With Ukraine, Keir Starmer was being presented as the leader of the free world. With the recent America trade deal and India trade deal, Keir Starmer is being presented as a master negotiator, and now he's arguably being presented as positively right-wing. I mean, let's take a look at some of the recent headlines surrounding this. So I'll start with here. Starmer is impersonating Farage, but it won't save him. I mean, what more do you want? Starmer is impersonating Farage. Keir Starmer is being presented as the man for Brexit. In fact, when I got home, BBC News was playing on the television, and I heard them saying that Keir Starmer is trying to capture and own the Brexit narrative. And we saw it in that clip of his speech. Starmer says that he wants to follow through with the true meaning of take back control. He does indeed sound like Farage, like a Brexiteer. In fact, at this point, he is practically outflanking Farage, seeming more right-wing than him. And don't get me wrong, I, like many truly right-wing people, are fed up with Farage and think the man is only wasting our time, but to see Keir Starmer being described as impersonating Farage is incredible. Success or failure of Starmer's promise will be difficult to measure. This is likely preparing us for the reality that Keir Starmer's promises won't go the whole hog, and things will still get worse, and that they'll try to obfuscate the decline, something I talked about in this recent video. Then we have another one. Starmer must apologise for shameful language coming from Keir for Calais. Now, all throughout the post-Brexit woke era, Keir for Calais was presented as the big woke villain. To see Keir for Calais come out and equate Starmer to last year's far-right riots, clearly Keir Starmer is being pushed as right-wing. Here we have migrant dies crossing English Channel.
Oh no! Anyway.
Then Badenoch, Labour can't be trusted to protect UK borders. Slop, who cares? Farage saying Starmer is making promises he can't keep. Again, you know, prove it, mate. He absolutely could keep these promises. They're not extreme promises to keep. And he is, after all, presenting them as neutral, common sense and the best for the nation. So even for your typical Labour voter, that is something hard to disagree with. And here we have Starmer focuses on legal migration. And kindly the BBC has given us the graph here. This little section here is the Boris wave. This was immigration under Boris Johnson. You remember when he was called Base Boris? Absolute bollocks. Now I think that Keir Starmer is going to bring things down to about this level, which is still extreme in the grand scale of things. What the British people want is immigration at around this level, the low tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. But still, compared to Boris's millions, this is a lot less. Also, do bear in mind that this is net migration, not just immigration. Immigration itself was far higher. But yes, this is the haggler's gambit. The price was set at this level, we want it down at this level, and so we compromise towards this level and thus feel good about ourselves in the process. Meanwhile, it is the people behind the regime who are still benefiting from the cheap labour. They are the guys winning in this situation, not us. And then the last headline here, PM says he's been left to clear up the mess left by Tories. That is how this is going to be framed. It'll be framed as a Tory issue. Forget the fact that the policy of mass immigration really kicked off under Blair, as I explained in this video. Now, what with post-Brexit immigration especially, this can be framed as a Tory policy. The Tories must be the ones to take the fall, which is why I also think that reform will take the place of the Tories. Oh, and I said it was the last one, but I found one more that I think is worthy. Starmer tries to reach the right balance. You see, this is ultimately how it will be presented. As I spoke of in my Death of Progress video, I think that the governments moving forward will try to present themselves as pragmatic, neutral, balanced, common sense and what have you. This is not being presented as ideological, it's not even being presented as political, it's being presented as common sense, as the right balance. And so yeah, it is very interesting to see how this is all playing out. Ultimately, of course, Keir Starmer is not right-wing. In fact, I don't think that the regime or Keir Starmer are ideological in the slightest, either left or right, but they are instead entirely motivated by their own power. Also, one must understand that not only are the establishment a uni-party with all parties working together, but all the parties, all the news outlets, all the banks, all the think tanks, everything works together. So when you see the BBC, the Green Party leader and the guy from Care for Calais all painting out Keir Starmer to be right-wing, they are trying to prop up his credentials among the right-wing. Perhaps more specifically among the socially conservative working class, i.e. the Red Wall. That is what I believe is going on here. In response to the aftermath of the avoidable tragedy of Southport, and in response to a decade and a half of Tory betrayal, people's trust in the British establishment has probably reached an all-time low. Now it seems that the establishment is trying to regain some of that trust. But I must warn you, do not fall for it. Do not forget the Tory betrayal. Do not forget the Boris wave. Do not forget that we were promised immigration in the tens of thousands, not the hundreds of thousands. Do not forget the authoritarian response to the Southport riots. Do not forget the attacks against the farmers. Don't forget any of this. I'm sure that realistically many people will forget, and come 4 years' time when we have the next general election, people will again vote for Labour. But please, if you can, do not forget what they have done to you. Do not forget what they are still doing to you. Take a step back and look at the bigger picture. This is not mass deportations, this is not mass remigration, this is not net negative immigration as we would all love, but merely a marginally reduced immigration presented as a great victory for the Brexiteer working class. Keir Starmer is being propped up and sold to us as competent, pragmatic, neutral and at times even right-wing for a reason, and that reason is not in our interest, but in the interest of the very same people who have been profiting at our expense for decades. Still, it's all very interesting to see. In fact, at the time at the end of last year when Keir Starmer said that mass immigration had been an experiment run by the Tories, I made a response video then too, and if you check it out, I'm sure that there's even more context and good analysis to explain what's going on here. In any case, I think that about does it. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't hesitate to hit like, hit subscribe, share it around. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee page, you can join the channel, I have Twitter, I have a Discord. There are plenty of ways to support me such that you can get more content like this. Whatever the case, I thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next one.